understand this concept, because it's about principles and sound doctrines, all right? People go, oh, why didn't you just go pay the 63 credits on account or whatever these people wanted, man? You subject yourself to the lion's den, and for what? Let me help you understand, just in case you haven't caught it yet. There are two issues that I have with being forced to do something. One, involuntary servitude should not be had, which means I need to be compensated for a compelled performance. All right? And the second one's a little more intricate. And I ask that you just kind of sit back and listen and follow along. Maybe take some notes. If I own the automobile, then why would I have to register it with a for-profit private corporation? And if I own it, that presupposes that I'm subject to anybody else as far as what I can and can't do with my private intellectual property, or private property at all, or just property, my property. Putting private in front of it is an adjective and diminishes the value of the word property. The Founding Fathers never put private property in the Constitution. They just said property. So, either the property is mine and I can do with it as I please, or the property is vested in the state and the obligation is for the state to license, register it, pay for the tire changes, pay for the oil changes, change the spark plug wires, hoses, belts, as needed. You see, if I'm merely just a caretaker for the state's property, and I'm also doing owing for that as a trustee, that's why I'm fighting this. Because logically it makes no sense. I either own it or I don't own it. If I own it, how can I be compelled to register it on your records? I have no obligation, no contract in play to register any of my things with your principal. And if there is an obligation, bring forward the contract, because contract creates the law, and show me where I knowingly, willingly, and intentionally entered into a contract with full disclosure, granting my life source energy to your principal. Because see, that presupposes that a man has a choice of whether or not he participates in socialism, quote unquote. So either it's a socialist nation, everything belongs to the state, I can go where I want, I can do what I want as a trustee, so long as I take care of things, but all the obligations fall upon the state, the principal. Motor blows, the principal has the obligation to put the motor back in. Trustee has a duty to notify the principal of expenditures, things that are needed. 2 felony charges, which is ridiculous, over an alleged obligation of a $63 tax. Now, when they first brought their claim, they used this slang called title jumping. It's a title violation, title jumping. They even admit in the court, there is no legal definition for title jumping. There is no such claim in the statutory realm as title jumping. So they're just going to go on to say that it's a title violation. They're going to allege that I, as a man, have an obligation to somehow contract and do business with them. Which brings me to my next very important point. If that be true, am I free? you're being compelled in any way, shape, or form to give your life source energy, your time, to a political subdivision for the greater good of mankind, quote unquote, which is the guise they use to dupe everybody into doing this shit. Am I free? Is that freedom? There's been a lot of debate about, oh, Derek, you don't think you have to register an automobile, blah, 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 blah. Let me point something out. Most people don't comprehend the reason a driver's license was created is because when the automobile was developed, it was the wealthy that could afford them. They didn't want to travel around on their own accord. They much rather would have a chauffeur. A chauffeur is a position in commerce. It's a commercial activity. As a chauffeur, hauling passengers or services for payment and compensation, I am required to have a license and register the automobile. Because I'm actively engaged in commerce on the freeways, highways, and byways and passages of the American people, and should I, in a commercial capacity, cause harm, damage, or loss to the state, national, or the American while engaged in commerce, I have to be able to provide remedy. That's why that system was put in place. Then they started making these case laws about, oh, no, yeah, you gotta have it. You gotta have it. You were operating a motor vehicle. That's funny. Show me a motor vehicle dealership. Show me one dealership in this world that's a motor vehicle dealership. Show me one. Never seen one. Been to a lot of car lots, driven a lot of cars. Never found a motor vehicle dealership. It's their definitions. You're operating in their jurisdiction, which is the jurisdiction of commerce. Law of merchants is what it is. Law of mercantile. Civil law. Roman civil law is what it is. And there's nothing wrong with it. So long as it's not abused. So long as the American people are cognizant of what's actually transpiring. So, in the event that they would say, yeah, you're guilty, well, then there's a true bill due and owing from the time I was like 14 or 15 years old, having these permits or whatever to engage in commerce. Furthermore, who was I employed by? You see, you can bring charges against a man saying he owes a tax. Well, that presupposes you can prove that I was engaged in commerce for profit and income. So if you're going to bring those charges, you need to ramp it up quite a bit more than that. You actually need to bring charges for operating a business in the territory without a license, not being insured to do business, right? Failure to comply with the IRC tax code. You need to ramp it up a lot. But see, they don't want to do that, because then that invites other jurisdictions in the mix. And the cat will get out of the bag, because they'll never be able to prove that I was employed, because I'm not. A man has a right to make a living. You notice I didn't say a right to an income, because you don't have a right to an income. Furthermore, you have to understand the definition of income and what it actually means. An income is something a federal agent derives from his occupation. It's amazing to me how people don't see what's really going on. It's heartbreaking. It's devastating. So remember, this is about don't own it. And if I don't own it, and the state purports to own it, then it's the state's obligation, not mine. So the state should be sending you plates every month. Right? Right. There's another issue on the table. When you look at UCC 9-102, number 23, private household consumer goods primarily used for leisure and pleasure are not required to be registered. I don't know about you, I have automobiles. I don't have any motor vehicles. I don't have any motor vehicles. I don't define my property by their definitions and terms. It's just my property. And if somebody's got a higher claim to my property than I do, let them come forward now or forever hold your peace. Possession is 9/10 of the law. But nobody's ever told you what the other 10th is. I laugh. People always run around looking suave. Hey, Derek, possession's 9/10 of the law. Yeah, you're right. But I said I could still take it from you. What do you mean? By force? No, that's what the lying, looting, pandering thugs do. They take everything by force. I'll just go acquire the title. Because the other 10% is title. And title trumps possession. So people go, well, you just proved the state's case, Derek. You never got the MSO. Uh-huh. And again, if it's the state's, and I could never rightfully pay for anything because everything's an instrument of debt, it's just a promise to pay sometime in the future. So there would be no tax on a promise to pay sometime in the future because a tax on what exactly? A promise? You can charge interest on a promise of future labor? People just don't think about it. Not only they're charging interest on your labor, but they've also got a form of currency out there that depreciates in value. Now, Colonel Mandel House saying very soon the American people will pledge their biological property and they will never know that they're funding the government, and we will become wealthy beyond our wildest imaginations because not even 1 in a million will actually figure out what we have done. And if one man should ever actually figure it out, we have in our arsenal, ladies and gentlemen, plausible deniability. Because they keep everything on the private. Hard to compel a private PMA to bring forward their records. If you bring claim, you got the onus of probandi to prove it. How are you going to compel an entity under the 14th Amendment that was granted rights, like their man, which they're not, and you can't compel them to perform and bring forward their records? They act as though a corporation is a living, sentient soul within their jurisdiction. And it's all to float the expenses of government. There is no other way. There is no other way to float government, to finance government, except for the ancient system of pledging, where we pledge our labor, our sweat equity, our energy, and use foreign instruments that are debt instruments that don't belong to us. And the state allegedly holds all the assets in trust for the beneficiary's benefit. And make no mistake about it, they know that you're the conservator. They know that you're the beneficiary. The problem is there's no record that's been established that proves it. That's your duty. That falls upon you. James likes to argue. He missed his calling. He should have been a lawyer. argue. I don't like to argue. Arguments are, it's bullcrap. I don't like to argue. There's nothing to argue. There are no facts in dispute. The only question becomes, if I violated the letter of the law, in order to determine that I violated the letter of the law, you've got to bring forward the contract that I knowingly, willingly, and intentionally signed, where full disclosure was provided, and that in no way, shape, or form are there any blind adhesion contracts that I was unaware of or that are unconscionable. A man has a right to decide for himself whether or not he's going to participate in a society. That was what was so beautiful about what the Founding Fathers did. They saw that not everybody wanted to be underneath the king. So they wanted to ensure that man had free will to choose whether or not he supported a society. And that poses the question, what society? Because the Bar Association in and of itself is its own society. They don't consider themselves to be like you and I. They're privy. They consider themselves first-class citizens, and you and I are considered second-class. Are they really working on behalf of the people when they tax the people to the brink of poverty and then squander away the funds that they're collecting on behalf of their foreign principal, whisk them off, send them out into private trusts on behalf of the banksters? Are they working for you guys? How's that working out for everybody? So again, it's about sound doctrines and principles. The other thing is, an agent and agency makes a claim that I have a purported duty and obligation to his principal. Fine. Put it in writing and sign your wedding signature to it. Now, for whatever reason, I already know the reason, I can't get any of them to do that. The prosecuting attorney tried to make a deal with me the other day. I told him, nah, I'm not interested. And I thought about it. I said, oh, that makes me in dishonor. Wait a minute, I've reconsidered. I will listen to what you have. What do you want to do, Willis? I said, you give me $2.5 million, I'll accept your agreement to contract. You give me $2.5 million for bringing a frivolous claim for which relief cannot be granted. You seal this matter, vacate it, close it out, and I want my rights, titles, interests, dividends, derivatives, debentures, hediments, general tangibles, general intangibles, chattel security, trust residuals, trust residue, assets, rents, profits, and proceeds. And we'll forget this mess ever happened. No deal. Wait a minute. You're the one that made the offer. I stipulate the conditions, and now you say no deal? You're in dishonor at this point. I just tried to provide remedy. Then I said, tell you what, why don't you just give me an order to go register that motorcycle? As an agent and agency, surely you have the authority to order me, put it in written form, and sign your wet ink signature to it. I'm not going to do that. Now, how is it all these people are trying to compel me to perform, but they need me to volunteer? They won't give me an order. I'm more than willing to fulfill an order. Give me an order. I'll fulfill it. Why is it none of them will give me an order and sign it with a wedding signature? Doesn't that strike any of you guys as odd? Maybe a bit insane. Wait a minute, you want the man to do a thing, but you don't want to sign a contract? You don't want to give him the order? Because he said he'll accept the order. He's remaining in honor. Give it to him. They won't give a fellow like me an order like that because I know what to do with it. Anybody else that was a smartass that said that, prosecutor probably lost out a piece of paper. Write it down on a piece of paper. Get down there and get it done. Here's my signature. Go on. But when you're intuitive and learned and realize that you don't work for free, and I'll be damned if I'm going to be told what to do while I live here because I'm a lawful man, so absent a victim, absent a crime, my business is my business and you mind your own. And they know that. They know that stuff. My point to all this is, if you use logic and reason, there's no need to utilize statute and code. It's a waste of your time. It's practicing law. That's what the code is there for, to practice things. You notice, we don't say we're practicing equity, because there is no practicing equity. We exhibit equity. Equity is exemplified within our heart, mind, body, spirit, and soul. And we do our best to enforce and uphold the law. We don't practice law. There's no such thing as practicing law. You either are lawful or you are not. There's no practicing, Skipper. You can only practice legalese. You can only practice, the twisting of the language to manipulate man's mind to get them to enter into a contract with you. That's a fact. But there is no practice of law, because the law has been well established. It's been here from the beginning of time. It's exemplified in the Constitution, the law of the land, which is the law of God, which is the law of nature. What goes up must come down. Only an idiot would try to practice that. All right? There's no practicing it. It's natural. It's law. It's there. You saw it for yourself. What goes up must come down. Now, what we as man decide to call it is a whole different animal. See, they call it the theory of gravity. And that theory stands the test of time until somebody else comes up with another theory that's better than the theory of gravity. So again, it's just a concept. But the fact is, whatever's up comes down. Theory or not. I don't care what you call it. You call it apples and oranges. It don't matter. This will continue to happen every time I do it. It will never change. It's the law. So with that said, I love you guys. I got to get on the road. I got to fuel up and all that fun jazz. And court tomorrow at 11 a.m. Keep in mind, I've got my reservations on this one. It's going to be interesting. I haven't really decided how I'm going to move. Some of my very learned friends are like, hey, you should have done a bunch of paperwork. Oh my God, what are you doing? Well, have faith in the Lord. I know the difference between wrong and right. I spent my entire life beating the shit out of bullies, people that like to pick on the meek and the weak and the weary. And the biggest bullies I've ever encountered in my life are no doubt people that are affiliated with a bar association or the state, alleging somehow that they're here for our protection, our safety, our sanity, and at the same time fleecing us at a phenomenal rate, all under the guise that it's needed in order to have a civilized society. From good, evil can manifest. But from evil, no good can ever manifest. If you're stealing from the American people to unjustly enrich yourself under the guise it's for their benefit, there is no good. I don't care how many roads you pave by stealing from them. Theft is theft. Unjust enrichment is just that. Under the guise of justice or not, even if some people benefit from it, it's still theft. And from evil manifests no good, no matter how good the intent might have been while you participated in the action identified as a trespass by way of theft. And that's what they're doing.